In this video, I'm going to introduce both vertical and horizontal reflections of a parent graph. The parent graph I'm using is f of x equals the square root of x. Here it is graphed in red along with 4 accurate points on the graph. In order to get accurate points, the x values are perfect squares, so when you take the square roots, you get a whole number. What I want to do is now graph g of x, which equals a times the square root of bx. For this video, the only values of a and b I'm interested in are 1 and -1. So initially, I have a is 1 and b is 1. So I'm going to have 1 times the square root of 1 times x. We never write it like this. We always just write it as the square root of x. So when I currently graph g of x, it should lie on top of my f of x graph. Did that happen? Yes, here's my blue graph that lies on top of my red graph. So the first thing I want to do is figure out what happens when I change the value of a to a -1. So let's change a to -1. Well, what happened to the graph? Notice it was originally all above the x-axis. Now it's all below the x-axis. Let's look at the individual points. 0, 0, a point that was on the x-axis, didn't move. But the point 1, 1 became 1, -1. Notice the x value stayed the same, but the y value turned into its opposite. The point 4, 2, it was 2 units above the x-axis, now becomes 2 units below the x-axis, but notice the x values stayed the same. Last point, 9, 3, 3 units above the x-axis became 3 units below. So multiplying by a -1 outside the function is a vertical effect. It vertically reflects the graph across the x-axis. So that's what multiplying by a -1 outside the function does. It's a vertical reflection in the x-axis. Now let's put a back to +1, and now I'm going to multiply by a -1 inside the function. And now look what happened to the graph. It used to be on the right of the y-axis, now it's on the left. Looking at the point 0, 0 that was on the y-axis stayed where it was, but 1, 1 became -1, 1. The y value stayed the same, but the x value became its opposite. 4, 2, it was 4 units to the right of the y-axis. It becomes 4 units to the left of the y-axis. And finally, the point 9, 3 will also be reflected across the y-axis, but I don't have room to show the point -9, 3 on this video. So when I multiply my x value inside the function by a -1, it's a horizontal effect. It's a horizontal reflection in the y-axis. So to review, multiplying by a -1 inside the function is a horizontal reflection in the y-axis, but multiplying by a -1 outside the function is a vertical reflection in the x-axis. And then we could have them both be a -1. So here I have a vertical reflection and a horizontal reflection.